Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
I just want to show you how this crime is still in progress, how it is happening in real time, how you have this these news outlets, these right-wing lunacy, Cult 45, it's like the craziest alternative universe they've created over there on this particular cable channel. Now, they invoke this article by Adam Entus, which is just amazing, on the background of Mr. Lutz, who should never ever be relied on for anything. The man is a lying sack. He is a corrupt prosecutor. And Rudy Giuliani is relying on the words of this man to accuse 33-year Foreign Service officers. Also, George Kent, who he testified there's never been a time in like recent modern history that there hasn't been a George Kent in Foreign Service. It's his family's, duty to, be in Foreign Service. It's just so unbelievable. And he casually sits there after coming back from going over there to talk to these dirty prosecutors. And, this Adam Entus, it's a hit piece. And Marie Jovanovic, she committed perjury.
Much of your work in Ukraine hinges on the word of former prosecutor general of the Ukraine, Lutsenko. But here's how he was described in the New Yorker. Of course, no conservative publication, but you gave them an interview. Lutsenko, sometimes referred to simply as the corrupt prosecutor general of Ukraine, has been portrayed hardly without reason as an unscrupulous politician prone to telling lies to further his personal ambitions. Lutsenko fed information to Giuliani, which Giuliani, Trump, and their allies spun to smear the reputations of the Bidens, and Marie Yovanovitch, whom Trump fired in April. One of the House's star witnesses told Lutsenko, said, "I don't think we'd be here if not for him." Now, this hit piece, and it's a hit piece,
of course,
also has you on the record admitting that you forced out Marie Yovanovitch.
Of course
you
I
said
did.
You needed her out of the way, but you're a personal attorney for the president, so why do you need her out of the way?
I didn't need her out of the way. I forced her out because she's corrupt. I came back with a document that will show unequivocally that she committed perjury when she said that she turned down the visa for Mr. Shokin because of corruption. The fact is, on the record, in the State Department's own records, the reason given is because he had had an operation and hadn't recovered yet. The operation, of course, was 2 years before. It's documentary evidence that she committed perjury. I have 4 witnesses who will testify that she personally turned down their visas because they were going to come here and give evidence either against Biden or against the Democratic Party. There's no question that she was acting corruptly in that position and had to be removed. She should have been fired if the State Department weren't part of the deep state.
But why didn't,
Wow. He just accused a 33-year Foreign Service officer of perjury when George Kent, Sondland, Volker, those were Republican witnesses, Tim Morrison, Republican witnesses, Marie Jovanovic herself, all of them said Rudy Giuliani was relying on the same corrupt prosecutors to smear her.
Now, some of those people helped Giuliani smear her, did they not?
They did.
So ultimately, that smear campaign pushed President Trump to remove her, correct, sir?
I cannot judge that. What I can say is that Rudy Giuliani's smear campaign was ubiquitous in the spring of 2019 on Fox News and on the internet and Twitter sphere.
So Ambassador Taylor and Mr. Kent, in all of your combined decades at the State Department, have you ever before seen an instance where an ambassador was forced out by the president following a smear campaign of misinformation orchestrated by the president's allies?
I have not.
Nor I. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Oh, my God. Okay. And, she testified to the same thing. that they were relying on these dirty prosecutors.
Mr. Giuliani should have known those claims were suspect, coming as they reportedly did from individuals with questionable motives and with reason to believe that their political and financial ambitions would be stymied by our anti-corruption policy in Ukraine. After being asked by the Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs in early March 2019 to extend my tour until 2020, the smear campaign against me entered a new public phase in the United States. In the wake of the negative press, State Department officials suggested an earlier departure, and we agreed upon July 2019. I was then abruptly told, just weeks later in late April, to come back to Washington from Ukraine on the next plane. At the time I departed, Ukraine had just concluded game-changing presidential elections. It was a sensitive period with much at stake for the United States and called for all the experience and expertise we could muster. When I returned to the United States, Deputy Secretary of State Sullivan told me there had been a concerted campaign against me, that the president no longer wished me to serve as ambassador to Ukraine, and that, in fact, the president had been pushing for my removal since the prior summer. As Mr. Sullivan recently recounted during his Senate confirmation hearing, neither he nor anyone else ever explained or sought to justify the president's concerns about me, nor did anyone in the department justify my early departure by suggesting I had done something wrong.
Okay, let's go to John Sullivan's testimony, shall we? Because she invoked John Sullivan, who is the nominee to be the new ambassador to Ukraine, and he was asked about what happened to Marie Yovanovitch.
You were aware that there were individuals and forces outside of the State Department seeking to smear Ambassador Yovanovitch. Is that correct?
I was.
And to seeking to remove her. Is that correct?
I was.
And did you know Mr. Giuliani was one of those people?
I believed he was, yes.
When, in fact, this came about, did you ever personally advocate for a statement of support on behalf of Ambassador Yovanovitch?
At the time of her removal, I did not.
So let me turn then to some of these other questions. What did you know about a shadow Ukraine policy being carried out by Rudy Giuliani?
My knowledge in the spring and summer of this year about any involvement of Mr. Giuliani was in connection with a campaign against our ambassador to Ukraine.
Oh, that's so interesting, isn't it? So you have somebody who's up for a nomination to be ambassador to Ukraine saying, yeah, there was a smear campaign. Marie Yovanovitch saying he's relying on these dirty prosecutors that we literally told Ukraine were dirty prosecutors in order to put me through some things. You have George Kent testifying that he knew that there was a corrupt effort to remove her by Rudy Giuliani.
Later, I became aware that Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma. Soon after that, in a briefing call with the National Security Staff of the Office of the Vice President in February of 2015, I raised my concern that Hunter Biden's status as a board member could create the perception of a conflict of interest.
Okay, he's fair.
Let me be clear, however. I did not witness any effort by any U.S. official to shield Burisma from scrutiny. In fact, I and other U.S. officials consistently advocated reinstituting a scuttled investigation of Zlochevsky, Burisma's founder, as well as holding the corrupt prosecutors who closed the case to account.
That would be Lutz.
Over the course of 2018 and 2019, I became increasingly aware of an effort by Rudy Giuliani and others, including his associates Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman, to run a campaign to smear Ambassador Yovanovitch and other officials at the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv. The chief agitators on the Ukrainian side of this effort were some of those same corrupt former prosecutors I had encountered, particularly Yuri Lutsenko and Viktor Shokin. They were now peddling false information in order to extract revenge against those who had exposed their misconduct, including U.S. diplomats, Ukrainian anti-corruption officials, and reform-minded civil society groups in Ukraine.
Isn't that something?
During the late spring and summer of 2019, I became alarmed as those efforts bore fruit. They led to the ouster of Ambassador Yovanovitch and hampered U.S. efforts to establish rapport with the new Zelensky administration in Ukraine.
That's so interesting. Now, here's a man who is an American citizen but was on the board of a natural gas company, no, not Burisma, a natural gas company called Naftogaz. And they asked him, what did Rudy Giuliani want?
But they were saying, we'd like you, we're going to make you the president of Naftogaz, the CEO, and by the way, we're going to get rid of the U.S. ambassador?
They alluded to the fact that the ambassador was not aligned with the interests of, or she will be changed. Honestly, I didn't take it seriously at first. You know, you hear all sorts of crazy stories, but you know, when it starts panning out and when it started happening and you start hearing about this is actually going to take place, and then it actually took place, that's when it was just a moment of wow.
How many people does it take to actually convince Cult 45 that the President of the United States is a criminal? Rudy Giuliani is a criminal. Igor is a criminal, and Lev is a criminal. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.